Well, hello. I'm Wendy Rose Williams, and I'd like to warmly welcome you to the Waking Up Spiritually podcast with my co-host, Gregg Kirk. And we are here twice a month on the second and fourth Sundays at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, or certainly you may be catching us via the podcast apps or via the various recordings. So we're so happy you're here and just want to help ease that process of waking up spiritually. And I'm a past life adventure guide. I help people release energy that doesn't serve you anymore. Things like pain, anxiety, and depression, so that you can just free up and be your best self and have a happier, healthier life. My website is my full name, wendyrosewilliams.com, and you can request a complimentary 15-minute phone appointment with me there to see how I might be of service. So I'm going to turn it over to Gregg to introduce himself as well as today's topic. So again, a warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gregg Kirk. I do energy work. I help patients with chronic illnesses, and I run a weekly online group healing circle every Sunday at noon Eastern Time. You can come engage with me at my website, which is greggkirk.com. So it's spelled GREGGKIRK.com. I have an events button there where you can check out the various events I do, including the online group healing circles, as well as engage with me for an in-person or a remote energy session. So Wendy and we picked our topic this time based upon looking back on some of our metrics. We looked at our podcast metrics, we looked at our YouTube metrics, and we looked at our website metrics and kind of read the tea leaves there. And our topic today, let me share the screen, is, past life healing with your guides. So we have done separate broadcasts about past lives, past life healings, and your guides. We're putting them together this week, basically talking about how your guides have helped with a past life healing. So Wendy obviously does past life regression healings through her practice, and I do an energy practice that every now and then past life events come up. So let's get right into this. Wendy.
So we do have to acknowledge and have some sense of humor. We've all got those Superman, Wonder Woman, red capes on when we're at home and we're in just that unconditional love and no judgment. And we do pre-life planning. So, and then we get here and the reality comes in. And I just thought this visual was fun because you can either think of that skier as just admiring the view or going, dang, what was I thinking? Maybe this is a little bit too high up. Maybe this is going to be a scarier ride than I was planning. So our guides just certainly have a big role in helping provide that love, provide that wisdom and support during whatever that expert ski run might look like. So I recently had my first ever formal Akashic Records reading where someone did the reading for me. And it was fantastic. It was just a lot of fun because I was able to validate and just see the information as we were working together. And what came up was a past life of mine where my name had been Lily, and I had lived in Japan. And Lily actually stepped forward and became a guide for me as I was working and healing this past life. And I have this little shelf ledge in my office, and I've had this fan on it for years. It was a gift from one of our Japanese students who had stayed with us. And it's just sat there fine on that little shelf for years. And all of a sudden, after I met Lily and became aware of this past life and that she was stepping forward as a guide, this fan falls off the shelf all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's just really fun because first I was like, why does this fan keep falling off? And then I realized, oh my goodness, it's a fan from Japan. Hello, Lily from Japan. So it's just perfect. So what came up in that past life was Lily was a wealthy woman, but very lonely because her beloved didn't come home. I don't know what happened. That didn't come up in the reading, but her pervasive energy and feeling was she was angry. She was sad. And she was very stoic. It was the 1700s. She went about her social duties, but she felt isolated. She felt not understood. And she didn't feel she could complain to anyone because she felt it would have been disrespectful. So, what she concluded about her experience, about her life was, quote, great wealth equals great loneliness. You must be stoic. And I received a tremendous past life healing for this erroneous belief. And what we were able to do as we worked with Lily is to unbind her feet. I cannot tell you how much my feet had been hurting for a couple of weeks before this past life came up. So whenever you've got physical pain or big emotions coming up, it's just a great time to say, hey, is this a past life release? What's going on? What's this energy that I need to express and learn from and let go of? And she was just so grateful when her feet were unbound, and she just put them in the mud and just grounded herself. And it just felt so pleasurable to her to just have her feet be free and to be able to wiggle her toes in that mud. And I also couldn't wait to rip the chopsticks out of her hair. She had this big, painful, stylized hair, very beautiful, but just so uncomfortable. During the session, I like ripped the hair clip out of my hair and said to the gal doing the reading for me, oh my gosh, I got to get these chopsticks. I got to get these things out of her hair. And she then went fishing, which was a really big deal because it was her guilty pleasure. But she didn't feel as an upper class, wealthy woman that she was allowed to go fishing. That was for the more working class, the more quote common class, and she felt they had more freedom. So you can just see how we're just working to free her up. And the moment we started working with her heart, it's my past life, and opened it, that optimism just poured in versus her feeling so lonely and just so stoic. And we were able to activate what's called the high heart, which is above our physical human heart, as well as the feminine receiving, because I no longer believe great wealth has to equal great loneliness. And then you've just got to be stoic. That just didn't make sense anymore. And so as I worked with Lily over the next few days after I first met her and we did this healing, she then really started to step forward as a guide and just wanted to learn about my life, wanted to tell me about her life. She tends to show up when I dog walk. So it's just, kind of neat to be in nature together. And then I realized she was coordinating with my other guides and other appropriate past life personas of mine, other past lives, to complete the healing and upgrade. So that's how it started rolling out. And I just met her a couple of weeks ago. So any comments on that, Gregg?
No, that's fantastic. For those who don't understand what it is, can you describe what an Akashic Records reading is?
Sure, certainly. I believe that we all have a book of life that shows what has happened to us in the past, in the present, and in the future. And it's in this beautiful holy storehouse called the Akashic Records, which is a repository of all knowledge, all information of our earth lives. So there are certain individuals, practitioners, who have trained and can do Akashic Records reading for other people with their permission, because this is holy information. I mean, this is your soul's journey. So it's not like you randomly would go into the Akashic Records and be poking around looking for something fun to read. It's not that type of a library. So again, it's very permission based. But I worked with a lovely gal named Deborah Lander, and she did this Akashic Records reading for me.
Very cool. So I work with people's guides as well. Like I said, just to give you a brief recap of the type of work I do, it's in-person sessions and remote sessions with people where after going through some steps to get people in the meditative state and to get some protection around us, and creating a sacred space for the healing event, or I engage with the person's energy body and we ask their guides to come in. So the guides always come in, and they usually are kind of hang around on the periphery. I don't see them very often. They hardly ever step forward and say, present like an image or anything like that. But I do get a lot of, I don't hear sound, but I just get information. I do hear a lot of, it's not hearing though, but it's telepathic. I get a lot of information. And sometimes when I start talking too much to the patient or start saying things they don't like, they stop me from talking. It's the weirdest feeling. Like all of a sudden I can't think or I start stuttering. And many people's guides have a good sense of humor. So they will give me a joke or say something really witty. That's way more witty than me, to make a very personal joke for the patient. So that this is really cool. So here are two experiences I'd like to relate that were an education for me. So at this point in time, I was doing in-person sessions for people at a wellness center. And this all happened in one day. So I did not know at this point in time, this is about 5 years ago, that people could have, I don't even know if it's necessarily a life, it's a consciousness. Okay. So your consciousness can be in something like a crystal, or it can be in a tree. And you progress up, and once you get into the human form, you never go backwards. But this concept was related to me. So one of the people I was working on had chronic psoriasis, and he was in a bad state. And so it was like an emergency session. He contacted me that day and said, I really need a session right now. So he came in. He was a regular patient. I'd helped him in the past, but he was definitely very stuck with the psoriasis, which is like, patchy rash on his body that can become painful. So he was contacting me in a state of pain. So he came in, we started the session, and as his guides came in, the first thing I saw, I connected with his energy body, and then the first thing they showed me was like this strange image of the guy, and I'll call him Woody, almost as a joke, because it looked like he was this walking partition made out of wood. And I was like, wow, you're a magnificent looking creature, like what are you? And it said, I'm Woody from the wood. I'm like, I don't even know what to say. What does that mean? And then all of a sudden I saw, it's very much like this image that, for those of you watching through video, it was a very tall tree. And I got the information that Woody had been a freaking tree, I mean, a long time ago, like thousands of years ago. And so after I got over digesting that, I started to getting the feeling of what this life or consciousness was like. Woody loved this life. He couldn't have been more content. He was just hanging out all day. His leaves were getting the sun. His roots were going deep into the earth. He was immovable. He just was having a fantastic time. So the crazy thing was, the guides then related to me, Woody liked this life so much. And in times of stress in his life now, he's trying to grow bark on his body. And I said, what are
Oh,
you?
that's the connection.
I said, are you talking about his psoriasis? And they said, yes. And they said, every patient who has chronic psoriasis has this problem. That was a bold statement.
That's fascinating.
Right. That was a bold statement to me. And it was so far left field. I told this to a few other healers who said at that point, they said, if you get any more information like that, please let me know, because they knew that that was just too crazy to come from left field like that. So that was amazing. And then as I was getting over that, I had another patient come in later in the day. The patient I'd seen quite a few times, and she came in and showed me a particular crystal that she had. It was a quartz crystal, very beautiful. When you looked inside of it, it was kind of fractal looking and rainbow looking, iridescent. A very nice quartz crystal that was, it had only partially been worked. Most of it was kind of raw. So it was very unique and cool. She, showed it to me and said, can I use this? Can we, make this a part of the session today? I said, absolutely. This is very cool. So, we put it down on the table with her, right nearby, and we started going. And then her guide said, okay, she used to be a crystal. And I was like, wait a minute. I was just told that this guy was a tree. So now you're telling me this person on the same day was a crystal. And they're like,
You're having quite the day, Gregg.
I was. It was a big red letter day, as they say. So it was okay.
Expand that belief system.
Yeah, the belief system was expanded like a hot air balloon. So the idea being that her consciousness, a crystal is a very high level form of consciousness. It holds energy and thoughts and experiences and so forth, like a computer. So it was a very cool existence for her. Well, of course, it didn't end there, as my stories usually don't. So I was holding this idea of like, okay, she used to be a crystal. Then her guide said, and by the way, the crystal that's on the table with her is an actual original piece of her. So I thought,
wow,
that's another very bold statement. So let me talk to her about this. So, the session was over and I did, so I started off soft. I said, what are your thoughts about, somebody having a past life as a crystal? She said, absolutely. I believe it. I said, okay, what do you think about this crystal that you brought in today? Not so coincidentally being a part of you. She said, oh yeah, I knew that. I said, what do you? She said,
that's
more or
amazing.
less was almost testing me. She said, here, let me tell you the story about how I found this crystal. She said, back in the day, she had a healing practice herself, and she found out, somebody told her about this little house that was out in the middle of the woods off the beaten track that had these fantastic crystals, all kinds of crystals of all form. And in fact, when she went in the house, there were some crystals that were so large, she said she didn't even know how they got in the house. They were immense. They weighed thousands of pounds. And there were other ones, smaller ones, just the most magnificent crystal shops she'd ever seen. Well, of course, most people I talk to who you walk into a shop like that, you get attracted to particular crystals. They call out to you. And of course, this one did. So she got it. And then she brought a couple of friends back to it. And then one day, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later, she wanted to go back to the crystal shop. And she and a friend who had been there before, they said, let's go back to the shop. They drove down the road and it wasn't there anymore.
Like the whole building was gone?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So it
Yeah.
had a particular purpose to fulfill and it was complete, perhaps.
Yeah. So that's where she got that crystal. So there was just way too many supernatural and coincidental things happening with that. So it was like, wow, that was, I'm writing a second book. This will be in them. I asked permission for her, to use this story in the book. And she said, absolutely. It's fascinating. So again, all of this came through the guides, showed some past lives beyond anything I ever knew, and had a very real world application of here's a piece of me, amazing. So
it certainly is. Thanks
right.
for sharing those, Gregg. Those are amazing experiences.
Yes.
So I had a recent client just a week or two ago, and her guide presented as CHIRON, the wounded healer. And it was really interesting because he came in kind of slowly. And first she was seeing horns and she thought like it might be like a ram or a sheep coming in. And I just was quiet because I was seeing Chiron, but I certainly don't want to influence the client. And after a moment, she said, "Oh my goodness, pulling the arrow out of the flank. I think this is Chiron." I said, "Yes, bingo. That's exactly what I'm seeing too." So how interesting. And he then, so as I was helping her connect with her guide, who was choosing to present in this manner, I then asked the guide to give the client a gift that will be very meaningful and practical in their life today. And he kind of went, ta-da, and gave her the gift box. And as she opened it, it had a little scroll in it. And as she opened the scroll and read it, it said healer. And I could just feel the emotion. And I asked her, "How do you feel about that?" And she said, "I have been fighting the knowledge that I am a healer, and I've been trying to deny it, and I've been trying to move away from it." I said, "Well, that's the wounded healer."
Right.
So how perfect that the guide chose to come in that way. So he provided some personal details for her as how she may wish to serve. It was just a lovely conversation to get to witness. And he emphasized for her that her career, because she is a full-time healer with the various things that she does not encompass her full life purpose. He also shared that with her, which also that needs to remain private between the two of them. But his final message to her was, "Trust what you see." And I thought, what a perfect message, because we get these beautiful intuitive flashes and intuitive information, no matter how it comes to us, whether we're seeing it, hearing it, feeling it, sensing it, knowing it, smelling it, tasting it. We've got all our senses. And then we can just like pull back too much and go, oh, that's not right. That can't be true. And we just kind of like put our hands up because our left brain, our ego, isn't being balanced, and we're not fully grounded and clear in our energy. So we push it aside, we shove it aside. Fortunately, our guides are infinitely patient, and they'll keep trying to bring the messages to us and support us and love us again and again and again as we go through our lives. When I had asked the guide what his name was, what she could call him so she could connect with him one-on-one going forward, he said Arthur. And again, I zipped my lip. I didn't comment on that because I wanted her to have her full experience. But I was connecting a lot of dots because the past life that she had explored was in Avalon. So I waited, and Avalon is related to Camelot, and there was a King Arthur at Camelot. So I thought, well, this can just all be a coincidence. It may just be interesting for me, because again, I don't want to, it's important in past life regression, you not lead the witness.
Right.
Just like in a courtroom, you don't want to lead the witness. You want to ask open-ended questions, certainly validate. But at the very end of the session, I asked her guide, because he was there again, just wrapping things up in the place of all knowledge and helping answer her questions. And I asked him if I could ask him a question, and he said, certainly. And I asked him if there was any connection of his name with King Arthur of Camelot, knowing that she had seen the past life in Avalon. So he smiled at one of us and he winked at the other. And he didn't want to comment further because he just was implying we could each work with that and do our own work with that. But the way it showed up for me was, I believe it was a parallel life of King Arthur's of Camelot, that he was meant to be a healer. He was a healer in many ways, bringing lands together, working to bring peace through war, interestingly. But hey, it was the Dark Ages, it was 1500 years ago. Yeah, it just was a really, really lovely session. So that's what came up. But that guide was definitely presenting to help her heal her past lives, so she could fully step into and just take a breath and just relax and go, well, of course I'm a healer and I don't need to be wounded. You know, she could get to that place of healthy, and just enjoy what she's doing. So that's what happened.
Fantastic. Great to be recognizing and activating more healers into the world. That's we need them.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some off-world and on-world past lives. Off-world meaning not on Earth, and how a person can have some what you would call extraterrestrial lives, and also have obviously a life here on Earth. So this patient came to me, and it was a regular patient of mine for quite some time, who she struggled with Lyme disease and a bunch of traumatic situations, traumatic life experiences. And one day in the session, when she was in person and I had my eyes closed and I was scanning her energy body, I saw an orange colored kidney shaped gland in her head, in her, human energy head, energy body head. And the gland, I got the understanding it was a vestige of her former life as an alien. So it was, for some reason, her energy body had carried some of the physical glands of her past life as an alien. It was causing energy disruptions in this life. And it also, this is strange, but it caused a slight deformation in the back of her skull in the occipital area. So, she and I had talked about this before, because I put hands on people's heads, and I mentioned to her that she had, as I said as gently as I could, but she had an unusually shaped back of her head. It was kind of went out, and we talked about that, months before, but I asked her if that had caused her any trouble. She said no, but then we saw this, independent of nothing, apropos of nothing. All of a sudden we saw this kidney-shaped orange gland. So we found an incision wound near the left kidney, related to a stabbing incident. So this is again in the energy body. She didn't have this. Well, actually, she did have she had an operation in this area. So that typically is what happens. You get stabbed in a past life, and then you have an operation in this life. Doesn't always mean there's something bad happening there, but the energy needs to be cleared. So she was a soldier in a past life, a human soldier, and been stabbed, with a sword during combat in the abdomen. In her later lives, she was a female who suffered miscarriages and aborted births as a result of this trapped energy. So in this lifetime, she was able to bring in 2 children successfully, but her second child's birth was traumatic, and she had always felt that she hadn't been able to bring her child through in past lifetimes, which was true. So she had this special bond with her second child that, she made it. She was finally able to bring her through the veil, which she hadn't done before. So this trapped energy also manifested into surgeries in more recent life, and then an actual tumor formation that had to be removed surgically. So there was all this stuff going on from an alien past life, as well as, physical. And look, she was a man. She was a soldier in a past life, getting stabbed. So we released all of this stuff, and she doesn't need to see me anymore. She graduated.
That's so wonderful. It's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on here, Wendy.
Fantastic. So guides can also be healers for us when we're dreaming, when we're sleeping at night. So during the dream time. So I'm going to share with you an excerpt from my next book, Regression Healing 2, Joe and Marilyn. I had an amazing dream the night of October 17th, 2020, that turned lucid. I was shown that Dr. Lorfin, an off-world psychic surgeon, had done extensive surgery to heal my digestion and elimination issues that had been problematic for the last few years. And I was eager to learn more during my past life regression the next day. And I think there was no coincidence to that timing. That's why I had that dream the night before the past life regression, so I could explore it and understand it more.
Right.
So the hypnotherapist asked me at the start of the session, as we were getting everything all set, and he asked me, "Do you feel your spirit guides are here now?" And I answered, "Yes, they are. They're giving me a funny visual. They've twisted the top of my head off quite gently, my crown chakra, like you twist the top off a bottle of water." And they then started pouring the answers, the resources, the help I need in through my crown chakra. And the hypnotherapist replied, "That's great. Let's go to a past life now." And we then went through and we healed 2 past lives, which were both in ancient Rome. One was as a slave and one was as a gladiator. And so we went through and did that during my past life regression session as the client. And the hypnotherapist asked me, "Do you feel you've released 100% of this energy?" Because those were tough lives. That was just a lot of stuff. So my higher self at that point came in and was answering and said, "Let's assess. We're strengthening her lower chakras. She had an incredible healing for her digestion and elimination system last night from Dr. Lorfin during the dream time." The hypnotherapist asked, "Who is Dr. Lorfin?" And my higher self, my soul, explained, "Dr. Lorfin is an off-planet psychic surgeon from the Great White Brotherhood. White refers to white magic only. It has nothing to do with race. Please disregard the old-fashioned name. It doesn't translate well in 2020. My apologies." The higher self continued, "She also had a powerful healing for the same issue a week or 2 ago with her healer friend, Gregg Kirk. That healing opened the door for the surgery with Dr. Lorfin, and it was a 90-minute surgery. We then woke her up from the dream so she could remember the experience and discuss it with you today." And the hypnotherapist replied, "That's amazing. Anything else for her to know?" My higher self responded, "We want her to eliminate the remaining dairy she consumes. It's not good for her. Her body can't break it down. She needs to say goodbye to the last bit of dairy." And then the higher self continued, "We're now doing some heart healing." So our guides are just so incredible, because this took a lot of work, because I had really been struggling with the digestion and elimination issues for several years. And it came from multiple past lives, and they've been working to heal them. So first they get me to do the session with Gregg, and that went well. So that opened the door, as they explained. So then I have this really powerful dream and have this psychic surgery during it. And then have the past life regression so I can understand it consciously, because it was all happening in my subconscious during the dream time. So that's what occurred. But that is just such an important role, that our guides can be working so hard and just so brilliantly to heal us, including when we sleep.
Yeah, I'd like to corroborate that. So there's been so many times, especially recently, when I've been doing sessions on people, and then suddenly the guides remind me that we had actually been working on this about 8 hours before while I've been asleep. I've seen this, I don't know, in the past 2 months, like 6 times. So
Wow.
the way it happens to
Strong
me is,
pattern.
yeah. So the way it happens, to me is like I'll be in the middle of, holding space, witnessing, watching the work happen, move across a person's energy body. And all of a sudden I'll get this deja vu flash of I was experiencing semi-conscious in the dream, and that it was related to this energy work that we were doing right then. And amazing. Well, thank you for mentioning working with me, Wendy, in your book and our session. Do you remember which session it was in particular that, and what exactly was going on?
I was having a lot of stomach pain, and it led back to a past life where I discovered I had been mistakenly poisoned. And what had happened, I was minor royalty, and my family was given, I had an older brother and my parents, and we were given these beautiful 4 glasses, which we used every night at dinner to drink our wine from. But lead was leaching into my system.
Yeah.
And there was no poor intent to it. It was just part of the times it was.
Right.
But I was slowly poisoned. And because I was the youngest member of that family, it affected me the most. And evidently I liked my wine with dinner. So even though I was like early teens, because again, this was hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. So that just was leaching into my system. And then I went insane as a result of it over time, and had to be put away and imprisoned. And my older brother was especially not empathetic or sympathetic at all. And he's like, she's just crazy. Females are always crazy. He was just giving off this sort of energy. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I had to meet him again, and found out that he's my former boyfriend who woke me up spiritually. Oh. And when he would say anything kind of jokingly, he had a great sense of humor, and we both joked a lot. We both knew how to be sarcastic with each other in a way that was fun, and it was very evenly matched. So it wasn't hurtful, or we wouldn't have done it. But whenever he would say anything joking in that vein, I would be like, "Roar!" Because it was the old past life energy of when he had put me down as my older brother, and just, they didn't know what was going on. Yeah. They didn't know why I was acting crazy, and that I was slowly just being poisoned. And then I took a prescription in this lifetime that made sense medically, and it was for a chronic condition. And it worked fine in the beginning, but over time, it became poison to me. And I didn't realize, I didn't think to eliminate it, because I'd been taking it successfully for about 2 years before it became poisonous in my system. So my poor stomach and digestion, and then also not knowing not to eat dairy anymore. And thankfully that started showing up in my dreams. There would be dairy, and I was working with professional dream interpreters, and they said, "Oh boy, Wendy, you need to get rid of the dairy." And I was like, "Why? Dairy's good for you." That's the big American fallacy. Right. We were educated, the Dairy Association and the government had done a pretty big job on that, of dairy is so healthy for you. So I had a lot of dairy. I drank milk with every meal, and I just had a lot of dairy in my diet. And that may have been, great for me, or okay for me when I was younger, but it was no longer okay. So it was just bringing a lot of things together. So Gregg, I don't know if that answers, if that flags your memory, which particular, I came to you with acute stomach pain. Yeah. It had gotten to the point where, I'm sorry, this is a bit graphic, but it's to illustrate the point. I went to our favorite pizza restaurant, been in business for years. I've enjoyed so many fine meals from this lovely Italian restaurant that specializes in pizza. And I got my favorite pizza. I brought it home, and I was like, "Yay, it smells so yummy." And I ate 2 slices of it. and during this time period, and my body went, oh my God, I had this extreme stomach pain. I went through it all up. I
Oh,
couldn't digest it at
wow. Wow.
all. And my stomach was trying, my system, my soul was trying to tell me, no more dairy for you, Missy.
Mhm. Right.
But I didn't get it. I was like looking at this poor pizza, non-offending pizza, which was, perfectly made.
Yeah.
And it was me, it was my system saying
Yeah.
no more dairy. I wasn't getting it. So.
Okay, let's move on to another thing I see quite often is somebody who has had a Native American past life. Usually, a lot of times it's pre-Columbian, so it's before Columbus came over. It's when the Native Americans were living freely, living the way they wanted to, and living, healthy, amazing lives. So this one patient in particular, I've done, I think, only remote sessions with him. So these came up through, phone call remote sessions. And the thing that, this is when the guides say something to you and it goes beyond your knowledge, or it goes beyond what you believe. That's when I know the information is good, because it's definitely not me. It's not coming from my knowledge base. It's coming from something else. And what's even more interesting is it teaches me something, because it goes beyond things that I've understood to be true. So starting with this, the guides showed an elaborate burial ceremony of this man I was doing the session with. He was a medicine man about, several hundred years ago, and he was being buried in the water. I had never heard of Native Americans burying their dead in the water. And there was a very particular way they were doing it. They had this black river stone that was maybe the size of a bowling ball if you flatten it out. So it's kind of a ellipsoid looking, very smooth. And they put that like right on his solar plexus area, and they strapped it around him and then put his body in the water, and he sank. So we saw that, so I was asking the guides, where are we? It looks like North America, the scene that I was being shown. What is this body of water? And I can't believe how specific they got. They said Lake Huron. So, all right, that's one of the Great Lakes. So I told, I narrated this scenario to him, and he liked the idea and he thought it was cool. But we did a follow-up session, and during this session, it more or less continued. We saw more details from this particular life. So during the session, I saw a lot of copper imagery at the time. So this confused me, because we had just gone through a flood in our house. We were having our kitchen renovated, and we had decided to buy this large hammered copper sink. We splurged a bit on our sink. And then to match, we outfitted the rest of the kitchen with this copper, like copper wall plates and copper lights and things like that. We kind of went crazy with the copper. I don't know why. And so this is when we were in the middle of this updating, and I started seeing these copper items around him in his past life as a Native American medicine man. And so I kept saying to the guides, I just have copper on the brain? Is that this is why this is happening? And they said, they kept showing it to me. They weren't speaking to me. They just steadfastly showed me these copper items that he was wearing. He was wearing copper wristbands, copper, neck plates, kind of crown kind of things. And so my understanding at this time was that the Native Americans, especially pre-Columbian, did not know how to work metal. They didn't have any metal. So I was just thinking, this makes no sense. I was apologizing to him when the session was over. I said, this just seems like bogus information. I'm sorry. He's the one who didn't give up. After the session, he did some research, and let me read to you what he came up with. Research shows that archeological evidence has not revealed metal smelting or alloying of metals by pre-Columbian natives north of the Rio Grande. So in other words, I'm right. They didn't, smelt, they didn't create metals or alloys. These are, mixtures of metals. But they did use something called native copper. This copper was abundant, particularly, guess where? The Great Lakes region.
Oh, wow. There's your
thousands,
validation.
yes, thousands of copper mining pits have been found along the lakeshore of Lake Superior and on Isle Royale. These pits have been in use as far back as 8,000 years ago. This copper was mined and then made into objects such as heavy spear points and tools of all kinds. It was also made into mysterious crescent objects that some archaeologists believe were religious or ceremonial items. The crescents were too fragile for utilitarian use, and many had 28 or 29 notches along the inner edge, the approximate number of the days in the lunar month. So, wow, I learned something there. So that was a really cool connection.
I can see him as a medicine man, perhaps wearing that as a necklace.
Right. Yeah, the crescent.
The crescent and the notches in it, for him kind of like tracking information for other people of dates. It's like a timeline.
Yes. So how cool is that? Again, this
very
is
cool.
Yeah.
Trust your instinct.
Right. Trust the guys. Just listen to them.
Right.
Stop fighting them.
Right. Stop arguing. Just
right.
just listen and pursue it.
Right. Well, thank you once again, Wendy. I really enjoyed this one today. Hope you did too.
Yes, absolutely. So please join us March 13th for the next Waking Up Spiritually. And the topic will be parallel lives. And I can't wait to jump into that. That was a wonderful suggestion from one of our listeners that we explore and talk about the topic of parallel or simultaneous lives. So we'll just see where the guides want to go with that topic. And I'm really looking forward to it. Please join us on Facebook. You can look for the Waking Up Spiritually group, and that's how you can see and hear this podcast live, second and fourth Sundays of the month at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And also visit our website, wakingupspiritually.com. You can click on the broadcasts tab, and there you'll find all the podcasts. We're coming up on 2 years fairly soon, Gregg. May will be 2 years. Yeah. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel if that's how you like to consume your media. And I've got the link here for that. Please rate and review us on Apple iTunes, where we are under the name Waking Up Spiritually. You can visit Gregg at his website, and Gregg is spelled Gregg, Kirk, KIRK.com. And my website is wendyrosewilliams.com. So thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful day.
Bye now.